bread. We think of it as sustenance, but for the medieval peasant, it was the doorway to an indescribable torment. Forget the romantic image of a happy farmer chewing on wholesome grains. Their bread was made from the cheapest, toughest flour rye. And that toughness came with a curse. Rye was the perfect host for ergot fungus. Eating this fungus didn't cause a simple stomachache. It released powerful alkaloids into the body. The hook is immediate. The most basic food was the most common poison. Here we reach our first horror climax. Ergot poisoning was known as St. Anthony's fire. Imagine an unbearable burning heat consuming you from the inside. The toxin attacked blood vessels, causing extreme vasoconstriction. Blood supply to the limbs was slowly cut off, resulting in gangrene. The peasant watched fingers, hands, and feet darken and fall off, piece by piece. The pain was so intense that screams echoed through entire villages. Poverty didn't just kill through hunger, it killed through excruciating physical suffering. But ergot had a second trick to turn the peasant's life into a waking nightmare. The alkaloids in the fungus were chemical precursors to LSD. The poisoned peasant wasn't just dying, he was experiencing a psychotic nightmare trip. Entire villages fell into convulsions and mass hallucinations, leading people to believe they were being attacked by demons. The terror was double the physical pain of gangrene and the psychological horror of losing one's mind, all caused by the very food meant to keep them alive. Leaving bread aside, we find the problem of the one-food diet. Their meals were monotonous grains, porridge, and a few available vegetables. And what was missing? Basic vitamins. Scurvy, which we associate with long sea voyages, was endemic in the villages. The lack of vitamin C, absent in cereals and nearly impossible to obtain in winter fresh fruits and vegetables, were luxuries of the nobility, caused the peasant's body to fall apart. Bleeding gums, teeth falling out, and old wounds reopening were the cost. The horror here lies in the simplicity of the cure, a single orange, and the absolute impossibility of having one. The nutritional deficiencies didn't stop at scurvy. A diet almost devoid of quality animal protein, combined with low vitamin D and calcium, led to osteomalacia and rickets. Adults and children developed soft, brittle bones. A hard day's work, a simple fall, could mean a fracture that would never heal properly. The peasant's body was literally forged in weakness, a silent testimony to a life of nutritional deprivation that prevented him from ever being strong enough to fight for a better life. If food was slow poison, water was a quick killer. Without basic sanitation, rivers and wells were inevitably contaminated with sewage, urine, and waste. Drinking clean water was an invitation to cholera, dysentery, and typhoid fever. Continuous ingestion of parasites and intestinal worms was routine. These unwanted guests stole the few nutrients the peasant managed to consume, ensuring he remained weak, apathetic, and constantly ill. To avoid death from contaminated water, the solution was weak beer, small beer. Everyone, from children as young as 3 to the elderly, drank it all day long. The boiling process used for fermentation killed most pathogens. The irony is grim, the safest drink was alcohol. This constant dependence on alcohol, even weak alcohol, had an insidious effect: chronic sedation. The peasant was always slightly drunk, or at minimum, mentally dull. This affected not only his health, but his mind. The constant cognitive fog made him less likely to question his condition, less likely to organize, less likely to rebel. The alcohol that saved him from cholera was also an unconscious tool of social control. Here the social contrast becomes even more brutal. While peasants suffered from ergot poisoning and scurvy, the nobility enjoyed meat, white bread free from rye fungus, and access to fruits and spices. The noble was visibly taller, healthier, and mentally sharper, not due to any divine right, but due to nutritional privilege. This brutal disparity made food a weapon of class domination. The medieval peasant's body was a monument to misery. Short stature, curved limbs, and extremely short life expectancy weren't products of nature. They were the direct result of centuries of poisoned and nutrient-starved diets. Archaeology shows that class inequality was literally carved into their bones. The deepest horror wasn't sudden death from plague, it was the slow, predictable degradation of an entire lifetime. Food, meant to give life, instead delivered agony, hallucination, and an existence of physical collapse. The horror of the dungeon was obvious. The horror of the dinner table was silent and ever-present. A brutal reminder that poverty is not just the lack of money, but the denial of basic choices that define life itself. Which of these everyday horrors did you find the most shocking? The hallucinatory fire of the bread, the internal decay of scurvy, or the dependence on beer as water? Leave your comment below. If you've made it this far, it's because you love dark history and aren't afraid of the truth. To avoid missing our next dive into the mysteries and horrors of the past, click the subscribe button and leave a like so the algorithm keeps revealing to you the history they tried to erase. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time, and remember, in the Middle Ages, even the food carried a macabre price.